everyone, Sandra Vail here at Homesteading Ways, and welcome to our third and final episode in our series Beginning a Garden. And today we're going to start with potting up your seedlings. Now if you started them in the smaller cells, you know, where you would get say 35 to 72 in a tray, you're going to want to pot them up once they get like an inch or two bigger, or after they've gotten their true leaves. And on here you can see that these definitely have their true leaves here on the tomatoes. It's still really early in my gardening season, so I haven't planted a lot, but I did do two to a cell here, and this is a bigger one. This is, I think, about a 3.5 inch. And when you're potting up, you always want to go at least double the size of what you started with. Now, I don't like having to pot up too often, so even if my cell is a little bit on the small side, say one of those real little ones that are 72 to a tray, I will still probably pot up to this size, because then I don't have to do it again before I'm ready to put them in the ground. And these, as you can see, they've taken off really well. I have 3 of them here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to separate them. So to do that, I'm just going to, they're a little damp. You don't want them completely dry where the soil is crumbly, you know, but don't water them ahead of time. Just leave them be how they are right here. And I'm just going to stick my fingers there to, you know, kind of catch it, and putting it over this bowl of soil here, and I already have some roots coming down there, and as you can see, the soil is falling away. So we're gonna try and separate these. Oh, they separated perfectly fine on their own. I got lucky there. So just gonna hold on to that. Try not to break the roots if you possibly can, and we're gonna put some fresh soil in here, and this has been dampened like I showed you in video number 2. So you're going to put some soil in there. You're not going to fill it all the way, and you can go ahead and leave the soil be a little bit loose, and you're just going to make a hole in there with your fingers so that it'll fit loosely, like so the roots can spread out nicely, and then fill it in. You want your stem here, you don't want to bury your stem in a lot of soil right now, so try and keep it as even as it was in the previous pot. So you're just going to go ahead and get that filled in, and then you will tamp it down. Just tamp that soil down a little bit and get yourself another pot for your second one. And when you're doing this with a bunch of plants, just line them all up. Get these little pots all lined up, get your soil in there, do it probably about halfway, then start sticking your plants in there and then adding the soil around them. So this is a little over halfway, I'd say. I'm going to put this second one in there. They're turning out really well. I'm pretty pleased. By the time these get in the ground, they're going to be huge. I planted these really early for my area. There we go. Plenty of soil in there with most of the stem out. Obviously you want the roots well buried. You can try and get it in the center of the pot. Maybe just a little more this way. There we go. And so once you've done that, just like before, you're going to water them in really well. Okay, so now if you have smaller seeds like this, where you have you had to spread them out in a bigger area like this, because you know some seeds are like that, you can't just plant one of them, and you need your spacing. These are a little on the small side still, but when they tell you that you need to thin them, say 1 inch apart or more or whatever, thinning them is done because unlike the bigger tomato plants, you can't really take apart the roots the way you could that. So when you thin them, all you're really going to do is you're just going to pinch them off, and that's it. And then that's how you get your spacing in between. Most of the time you're not going to need to do that if you're planting something indoors. Most of those plants will be large enough where you don't need to do that. And you will pretty much need to thin smaller seeds like this when you plant them outside directly in your garden, and that would be items like carrots and radishes and quite a few root vegetable type things, but there are others as well, so make sure to keep reading your seed packets and your gardening books. So when you're done potting them up, you're going to put them back to where you had them before, and for me that's here in this little greenhouse under this light here. If you have a really good sunny window or something like that, then go ahead and do that. But if you do have lights, you want your plants about an inch below the light, a little bit more if need be, but probably no more than 2 inches, because then they'll be stretching a lot to get to the light, and that makes them leggy. Also, another thing you'll want to start doing once your plants get this size is using a fan, preferably an oscillating fan, but if you don't have one, that's okay too. And what that does when plants start to get a little bit bigger like this is it simulates the wind outside. And so when the fan is on them, it helps them to build a stronger, thicker stem, so that when they do eventually get outdoors, they don't break in the wind. They become a healthier plant. And you're not going to do that all day long. You only need to do it, say, for an hour or two a day. That will really help to strengthen up these plants. And if you want another secret that I do, I also play music for my plants. And it might sound funny, but you know how people will talk to their plants? Well, I kind of do that too. But I have found that honestly playing music does help them grow. I do listen to a lot of different types of music, but I can honestly say that I did read in a survey somewhere that they did believe, they did testing, and that plants did tend to grow better with music, except not that really hardcore heavy metal kind. They did not do well with that. But classical or country or oldies, whatever you want to play, if you can do that an hour or two a day, I think your plants will really benefit from that. All right, the last thing I wanted to touch on is when your plants are finally getting big enough to get ready to go out into the garden, you're going to need to harden them off. And the way I do that is I just take something like this, or one of these tubs, or even a cardboard box, and I'll set the plants in there. And then on top, this is an old screen I have. I'll just put the screen on top like that. Or if you have an old window, that would work great too, because it'll let the light in. But you don't want to completely cover it most of the time with a window, because you do need air circulation in there, and too much heat can build up and it will fry your plants. Also, don't let them go all day long in direct sunlight. They're not used to that. So some sun is good, but not all day long. And then you're going to do that for, say, a day or two. And each one of those days, you're going to bring your plants back in at night and then bring them out again the next morning. But by the third day, you should be able to leave them out overnight, still keep them protected, and do that, 2-3 days. And then they should be well enough to be planted into the garden. If you know it's going to be exceptionally cold, then go ahead and bring them back in. But if at all possible, keep them out in these, your little bit of protected tubs here for about 3 days before you put them in the garden. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed this series, and if you're a new gardener, I really do hope that it helped you out. And one last thing I wanted to mention is I brought it up in previous videos about the Mother Earth News Fair. And I'm going, and they have a few throughout the country, and I really hope you look into it. I'll put a link down in the description box. Paul and I are going to go to the one in Asheville, North Carolina, and that's on April 28th and 29th. And if you're at all interested in gardening, you really need to get to one of these fairs. They have, I think, over 15 workshops on gardening alone. That doesn't include all of the other workshops they have on almost everything homesteading, anything you can think of. And if you do happen to go to the fair that's in North Carolina, hopefully we can meet up. Keep checking our posts on Instagram, and we'll let you, we'll be updating you as the fair gets closer and closer. Anyhow, thumbs up if you liked the video. I really appreciate that. Subscribe too if you're not a subscriber already. It was nice talking to you, and you take care.